up, guys? John here, and welcome to the Keeping It Local podcast, a podcast that features local businesses and local entrepreneurs that are here and ready to provide a service for you on Long Island. This week, I was very proud and happy to have Larry Sprung from Mitlin Financial on. Larry is a renowned financial planner, and he lives right here in Kings Park, actually. His advice is top notch. He has a completely different view about financial planning than I've ever heard before. So if you need some advice or you want to understand what financial planning really is and how to make yourself comfortable with it for the rest of your life and for your entire family, you definitely want to tune into this episode. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe so you get alerts on our future episodes. And let's All right, welcome back to Keeping It Local. We are here with episode 16, and I am very happy, very honored, very proud to have a fellow Kings Parker on here, Mr. Larry Sprung of Mitlin Financial. Larry, how are you?
I am great. And in full disclosure, I live in Smithtown, but go to Kings Park schools. So I don't know if that counts still, but I still consider myself Kings Parker.
Yes, I consider that area Kings Park as well, regardless of the zip code.
There you go.
But we won't disclose where that is. Not like you'll have a million people coming to your door after this, but still.
Well, listen, I'll tell you a funny story. When I moved in, we told everybody our address was the Kings Park zip code. And then we got a nasty call from the post office saying, hey, this is not your zip code. And I'm like, well, they told us we're in Kings Park. He goes, yeah, schools, not town. So, you might be able to figure it out.
It's amazing how that changes so quickly too. It's like all of a sudden one block over, you're in Smithtown.
Agreed.
And everything else is still the same. Like it's still, no matter what, it's still the same. But you reap all the benefits of Smithtown and then get to stay in Kings Park. So, hey, it's a win-win.
Agreed.
All right. So let's jump right in to Mitlin Financial. If you want, just give us a little background about how you started this business, what it is exactly, and what you do.
Yeah, so the business was founded in 2004, and really, it was founded out of necessity, really, because I am unemployable. Meaning I'm not a good employee. I just never was, and I worked for a lot of big firms, and it just never felt right, and I felt like we were told to do the right thing and always have the clients and families' best interest at heart. But at the end of the day, it was, well, how much revenue did you drive? And that just didn't sit well with me. So I founded the firm out of necessity because I couldn't jive in that environment. And basically, if you think about it, we're a wealth management firm. We work and serve families in the capacity of helping them design, develop, and implement a financial plan. We handle the investments management that goes along with it. And we're also like their corporate or their personal CFO in terms of, anything that touches their financial life. We're having those conversations and we're helping them navigate those areas of their life.
So I saw in your book that you have a section, or there's a piece of it that's dedicated to the holistic view of financial planning. So in your words, like, can you just describe that a little bit, like the holistic view? We were kind of tapping into it just now, but if you want to expand on that a little bit more, I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, so I don't like the word holistic because I think if you go to most financial planners, advisors, whatever they call themselves these days, they all talk about holistic financial planning. And the reality is they don't do that. All they do is concentrate on investments. So, I talk a lot about speaking with families about their financial health, their mental health, and their physical health. And we always feel like those three things go hand in hand. If you're delinquent or deficient in an area, it certainly affects another. If your finances aren't in order, you may not feel up to exercising and taking care of your physical health, and your mental health may be at risk. And they're really, all three of those things are really intertwined. So we go up and beyond, and we feel that if we're going to work with a family like we have with the families we serve, in some cases, 3 and some 4 generations, that we have to do more than just the planning and the investment management. We have to collaborate with professionals like you, John. We have families that are looking to buy a house. We have families that are looking to sell a house. And that's a financial decision. And that's something that we feel we should be getting involved with. Same thing as taxes, estate planning, property and casualty, all those areas we want to help those families navigate because they all have an impact on another area.
That so that's honestly one that I've never really heard before, but it makes complete sense. Is the need to make sure that there is mental and physical stability intertwined with the financial stability, because like you said, those are three pillars of a tripod theoretically, and if one goes out, you're in trouble. And it's very easy. I've been there myself where like a little financial stress it can wreak havoc. And even if you're not in dire straits, just knowing that it's there when there's so much at risk can be really, really debilitating for a long time if you can't get out of that. And I've seen that with clients, with real estates, and people I know. It's just, I mean, we all know. I don't need to say like what like
Yeah,
divorces
I mean, you
are.
could flip it on another, you're right. It doesn't just have to start with the financial. If your physical health isn't doing well, then that could impact the financial aspect of your life as well as the mental aspect. And they're all intertwined. You're deficient in one area, it affects the other two, and they're so dependent upon each other. At least we believe that.
Yeah. So is that kind of what I follow you on Instagram. I follow you on Facebook. I haven't watched the TV shows that you're on, but I probably should. So the your I would say your tagline, your slogan, your mantra is, "What did you do that today that brought you joy?" So was that a result of yeah, exactly. I had to look at it actually for a second to get it right. Um, was that ethos something that sprung from Mitlin Financial, or was that something that you took from your old place and brought it in there and is like, this is what I want to build around?
Yeah, so I'd like to say that we've been, leaning into that for as long as the firm's been around, but that has not been the case. Essentially, when we were launching our podcast, the Mitlin Money Mindset, we were trying to figure out, we wanted to have one question that we asked every guest to kind of have a level set, to kind of lean into. And all the credit in the world goes to my wife, who's our director of marketing, and she came up with the question, what did you do today that brought you joy? And when we started asking people that, it resonated. They really loved the question. They enjoyed answering it. And then what we started doing is we literally started putting it on T-shirts, on the front of the shirts. And the response that I got was incredible, in terms of for example, and we have this story in the book. I went to Disney with the kids and the family, and I'm online, and the cast member there just looks me dead in the eye and says, I ate a bag of Hershey Kisses today. And I'm like, okay. I look at my wife. I'm like, what the F is she talking about? And then my kids and my wife reminded me, she goes, look at your shirt. Dope. It said, what did you do? And she was answering the question. And that's just like a little one story. I literally go through airports and people are reading the shirt. People slow down walking, take pictures, ask me what it's all about, ask me to answer the question. So we've leaned into it and it's resonated really well. So much.
Hey, what's up, guys? Sean again. Sorry to bother you and interrupt, but if you like what you're seeing, then please click that like and subscribe button. The great thing about keeping it local is you're meeting local businesses and local entrepreneurs who provide phenomenal service. So this is almost like an initial job interview into someone that you might have in your own home to provide this job or service. So again, if you like what you're seeing, click that like button, click that subscribe button. Other than that, let's get back to the program.
So much so, this past weekend, I had the opportunity with a family that we serve. The husband's an American Airlines pilot, and he was retiring because he's hitting age 65, and FAA regulations make you retire. So I went down on Saturday to Tampa. I met him, his family, and friends down there for dinner. And we made shirts that said, what did you do today that brought you joy? And on the back, it said, flew on Tino's retirement flight. And people loved it, and they really leaned into it. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to talk about. It's not about amassing money just for the sake of amassing money or buying stuff to just have stuff. It's about creating a life that is surrounded and joyful. And that's really what this is all about. And, we've started leaning into that in the last like 3 or 4 years, and it's been incredibly powerful in a lot of different ways.
I mean, every time I see a picture of you with that shirt on Facebook or whatever, I immediately stop and think about it. It's something that stops you dead in your tracks because honestly, and I'm asking you this question. This isn't rhetorical. What is more important than that question?
Oh, I don't think anything. I mean, I think it's so important and so vital. And, whether you're on social media where you can see a lot of bad news and kind of not maybe walk away with the most happy feeling, or you're walking down the street and you're having a bad day, if you can stop and take a moment and think about what did you do today that brought you joy, I guarantee you there's probably something you can find in the last 24 hours that you've done that brought you joy, and focus on that. And it's a mindset shift. And I think we all can use a little bit of a mindset shift, if not all the time, at least once in a while.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's especially like you said, like you brought up social media, and there's so much negativity that you could take in on a daily basis, doom scrolling, whatnot, and then the other burdens that come with, I don't want to say it's a burden living on Long Island, but it's certainly expensive, and if you're middle of the road, this is not the easiest place to start amassing wealth. So I guess I'm going to transition into the next question here. Um, any simple tips and tricks, what do you think for someone who is, let's say Gen Z millennials, just bought a house in the last few years? What is your like go-to advice for them now that we're in this position where, we if we have homes or whatever, we have probably a decent salary, we can make a living, but how do we start amassing wealth when we're in this position of, we're probably a little bit above paycheck to paycheck, but we're not exactly, pulling in a ton of cash flow to reinvest and do what we want. What are your suggestions for people in that position?
So I think number one, and again, I don't think this is really dependent upon whether you're Gen Z, millennial, whatever. I mean, I think that these kind of framework, this applies to really everyone, right? And anyone can use it. So I think number one is you have to have a budget. You really have to understand, and I most people don't. You have to understand what money and how much is coming into the household and how much is going out. And you have to look at what's going out, obviously, you know depending on your situation, maybe with a greater fine tooth comb than depending on that situation you're in. But look for things that maybe you have a subscription that you haven't used in years that you could get rid of. Maybe if you've had one of the major cable providers and you've been with them for 4 or 5 years, maybe call them and see if you can get a reduced rate for the next 12 to 24 months.
Mm,
Look for opportunities to reduce that budget and cut the fat. And then I think the second thing is pay yourself first. We are the most important people in our own lives, but we don't treat ourselves as such. We get that paycheck, we get that money in, and essentially we start paying everybody else. And we kind of have this mantra that whatever's left over, I'll figure out what to do with. And it really should be the opposite. We have to change that mindset around and figure out how much money we want to save or put away, whether that's for retirement, whether that's for an emergency fund, college education, whatever tools those are. Save that money, put it aside, and figure it out. So, for instance, if your goal is to save 10%, take 10% off the top and then figure out how to live off the next 90% and then pay your bills. And it's amazing how our minds and how we can kind of live within those means once we've created those rules. So I think those two things are really paramount to being successful and being able to build wealth. And I think the third thing is, start today, start early. Don't wait till you're making more money so you think you could put more away. The reality is, when you're making more money, you're going to probably have more responsibility and more bills. So figure out a way today, even if it's a small amount, start putting that away, because the more money you put away early, the less money you're going to have to put on later on in life when you're older, because your money's going to be working for you in terms of compound interest.
mm. Yeah, that all is excellent advice, and it makes total sense. It reminds me of I'm gonna butcher who said it, and I can't remember. Said, I don't think it was Zig Ziglar, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't Warren Buffett, but um they always said, whoever said this, the quote was, um, spend what you have after you save.
Hmm.
So save your money first, then what you have left over, then you could spend that, but don't save after you're spending, because that money could be wiped out and gone, and then you haven't saved at all. It's, I think, kind of similar to the pay yourself first. It also reminds me of profit first. I don't know if you're
Right.
familiar with
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah. And I think profit first is a good idea in terms of, listen, there are many ways to get to the same result, right? And I think at the end of the day, it's just finding out what works for you and your family, finding a game plan and sticking with it. And that was really the impetus of the book, Financial Planning Made Personal. The reason why I wrote it was I got sick and tired of some of those big pundits out there, who you could probably know who I'm talking about, that basically gave out financial advice or budgeting advice and said, this is the way everybody should do it. Or, hey, you shouldn't be spending $5 a day on a cup of coffee, because if you put that in a Roth IRA, you'll have $20,000 more when you retire. The reality is there's not one way to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And number two, if you get a lot of joy from that cup of coffee, as long as you've planned for it and budgeted for it, then hey, get that joy, enjoy it while you can.
Mm. No, that's great advice. Yeah, 100%. Um, and so this kind of steers me into, since we're talking about this and wealth building and everything, a lot of wealth, for people right now is tied up in the equity of their homes, right? We all know that the real estate market has boomed over the last few years, and anyone who's been sitting on a home since, like, prior to, even after 2022, but if you bought prior to 2022, 2020, and really before that, your equity and your appreciation on your home has skyrocketed. I mean, it's been going, it went up 20% during COVID, and then you got another 10% for another 2 years. We're not seeing the typical 3% appreciation. So people are sitting on massive amounts of equity in their homes right now. And that's also because of mortgage rates and whatnot. It's preventing a lot of people from deciding, like, should I upsize and get that new home because I don't want to take on this current rate. But since people have so much equity in their homes, is there anything that you would suggest, or any ideas that you might have for making that equity work, for a homeowner?
So I think again, financial planning is very personal, and I think it depends on the family. And for example, in my situation, I'll share my own personal situation. I own several pieces of real estate, and the way I look at it, if you were to look at my investment portfolio, and I would just show you that, you'd be like, wow, you're pretty aggressive.
Mm.
If you looked at my age versus the amount of equity, and you saw that because I'm almost all equity, you'd say, hey, you're super aggressive. But the way I look at it, me personally, is I look at the equity that I've built up in the homes and the real estate that I have as the fixed income or bond component of my portfolio. Rather than just looking at it as a piece of real estate. So when you factor that in, then you take a step back and it's like, okay, the allocation looks a little bit better. So
Hey, what's up, guys? John from the Nest Egg team here. Thank you for watching so far. Really quickly, the real estate market is constantly changing. So if you're wondering what your home value is or how much equity you have in your home currently, click the link below in the description and you'll find out very quickly. Thanks for watching. Let's get back to the show.
So I think from family to family, making that decision is very personal. And
Mm.
if you feel, and with the advisor you're working with, you feel that that equity is best being served by being equity in the home, because you feel in the near, mid, and long term that that's going to get you the market like returns that you want, then that might be a good way of handling it. If you feel that pulling out some of that equity and putting it to work elsewhere, whether it's maybe diversifying into another property somewhere else in a different location. Maybe it's you have an interest in going into, rental income, rental properties and getting passive income. Or, maybe it's reducing the amount of money you're putting into the house. Maybe you're prepaying that mortgage, even though it's a low rate, to kick it out, to get rid of it sooner. Maybe redirecting that money somewhere else, like an investment portfolio, may be the right thing. So I think you have to sit down, and if you're doing this alone, and you don't have the expertise to do it, I can see that that would probably be a difficult proposition. So I would recommend at that point, sit down with somebody like John, sit down with a wealth manager or wealth management firm advisor that you trust, and have the conversation and see if the equity that you've amassed in the house, is that the right place for it? Or, based upon your age, allocation, and what you're looking to do, or maybe there are other opportunities that would allow you to unlock some of that value.
Mm. Yeah, because there's so much there. And yeah, you're right. It is a personal decision ultimately. What do you want to do and how do you want to make that work for you? Because there's risk tolerance that everybody has. Everybody's different. Like being in real estate, like rental properties don't necessarily concern me. Getting involved in something like that wouldn't affect me in a negative way. I feel like I know what I would want to do and how to handle it. But for somebody else, absolutely. And I think it just ties back to what you said originally. Like, what's going to bring you joy with that equity? Like, what are you
Right.
going to do that's going to make you happier? And if it's just going to be happy for you to let that sit in your home and keep growing, and you keep growing that nest egg, which is the name of my team, by the way, the nest egg team. I hope you like that because the nest egg's important. But if that's what you want to do, and that's what you should do, if that's what makes you feel comfortable and good, which I really think shows what type of financial planner you are, because that's your main concern, is making sure that your clients are happy and comfortable with what they're doing. So
Well,
I
I
commend
think
you.
at the end of the day, John, right? Um, to some, having comfort and safety, or feeling a level of comfort or safety, that's worth X% a year, right? So if it's going to mean, if they pull out that equity and do something else with it, and they're going to go to sleep every night with a knot in their stomach because they did it, because they're concerned about where they ended up deploying that money, then it's an easy solution. Don't do it, right? But if
Yep.
if they can deploy that money elsewhere and feel comfortable and not lose sleep over it, then there might be opportunities that exist for those people. So again, it's very personal, like you said.
Yeah. But what you're talking about with the knot in your stomach is something that I see so much right now with like my buyers, especially, who are
Yeah.
looking to buy homes, right? And that's with rates and prices of homes that aren't coming down. It's a very nerve-wracking experience. And when I first got into real estate, and I've been in 6 years now, so about a year into it, when I really understood everything after buying my own home, I sat there and I said, why is your mortgage based on gross pay? Why are these things done? And why aren't we sitting down with a group of people that are beyond just who's in real estate? And that's actually something I'm in the midst of starting up right now. A real estate group that involves a financial planner, an estate planner, your mortgage person, and the real estate person, because there's so much other money that is involved in this
Mm-hmm.
transaction. Because like the last thing I was thinking about when I bought my home was daycare, right?
Right.
And now I'm sitting there, I got two kids in daycare, and those costs, like, yeah, you look at your mortgage and you're like, okay, I can afford this, boom, and then before you know it, within a year and a half, 2 years, your expenses start going up and up and up just from natural life occurrences. I'm forming the group right now that's going to sit down and plan this out collectively, so that someone could see the road ahead more
Right.
clearly. And I just thought, I was like, why didn't I do this when I was younger? And I feel like that's a need. Like we had a financial planner, but it wasn't as broad in scope what we were doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that hits in, one of our core values here at Mitlin is know your expertise and collaborate when needed. That's one of our core, know your expertise and collaborate when needed. And we don't profess to be experts when it comes to mortgages or real estate. As an example, we have a family right now that just inherited a house. Mom passed away. Uh, Four siblings inherited the home. One of the siblings would like to keep the home and maintain it and have one of his kids move in.
Hmm.
So he's basically going to put 100,000 down, his quarter of the house, and then he's looking to finance. And you know, financially, I don't think it's a great idea for him, but we brought in the accountant, we brought in a mortgage person, and we sat down as a team and we walked him through the pros and cons. And he feels like emotionally, it would be, financially, it may not be the best move, but emotionally, he feels like it's going to fill a number of things that he needs to accomplish for his kid. And it was his family owned home. So, we're going to make it work for him. And, as long as he's going in with eyes wide open and understands what the potential risks are, then that's beneficial. But to your point, I'll share two quick stories. One is when I moved into my home in Smithtown, I had a condo in Oakdale, and my accountant at the time, when rates at that time in the early 2000s was like 6.25%,
Hmm.
and my accountant at that time said, "Hey, you should double your mortgage. You should borrow as much money as you can," because at that time 6.25 was actually cheap.
Yeah.
He said you should double your mortgage and take out as much money as you need as you can. And I said, but I won't feel good about that because I know the payment that I have now I can make in my sleep. If I double it, I don't know that that gives me the level of comfort. And I stuck with what I had and basically paid that off this year. So the mortgage is gone. That's one story. And then two, my uncle gave me a great piece of advice when I was buying that first house in Oakdale, because I basically ran through 10 calculations, and 5 times I was able to afford the house and 5 times I wasn't able to afford the house.
Hmm.
And he said to me, he goes, listen, he goes, at the end of the day, you don't buy a home for what you're earning today. You buy a home for what your future potential is. In terms of being mindful that your earnings are going to increase. So if you can just squeak by today, you'll probably be in a better position. But again, I think that people weren't as mindful back then 20 years ago about those other changes that I realize now that, as I got older, things got more complicated: kids, expenses, college, it gets added up and piled up very, very quickly.
Hmm. Absolutely. And but I am going to steal what you said because, we touch on that point a lot. The conversations I'm having right now with a lot of people is, I've moved away from the refinance conversation because that's what the gurus were telling people, a year and a half ago. Like, you're going to be able to refinance, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
date the rate, marry the house, that, all that nonsense. And just the professionals that I talked to, and after thinking about it for a while, we all came to the conclusion where it's like that is not great advice. Like, the advice is to be comfortable now because rates might go up. You never know. I mean, at this point, we do not have the crystal ball. Even though NAR and several other of the big mortgage predictors are predicting a rate decrease, I'm not going to put my full faith in anything because there's a lot of turbulence and a lot of factors that affect the mortgage rate. So my advice to buyers now is be comfortable with this payment. If you could be
Mhm.
comfortable with this payment now, and then when you hit that sweet spot of a potential refinance, if you can, and you could bring that rate down and lower that monthly payment, fantastic. But let's get into this with the thought process that this is going to be my 30-year payment and that's
Right.
it. Not that, yeah, mortgages used to be that. I mean, they used to be, in the majority of mortgages were paid out or over within 10 years because people either moved or refinance. That's going to change big time with these 3% rates. These mortgages are going to last a really, really long time, and people are going to be using HELOCs way more than they're going to be using a cash out refinance or anything like that. So the moral of the story is be comfortable with this mortgage rate, this monthly income now, or not monthly income, excuse me, this monthly payment now. Because if you're comfortable with this now, even though expenses will grow, like you said, your finances will probably get better. You'll be in a better position as years go on, and you have the chance, hopefully, to refinance. But that's definitely not the focus. Just stomach that payment now. If you can, then you should move forward. If you can't, then it's definitely not the right home, and we got to find something else.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
So now let me ask you, because your business is doing phenomenal, and I really want to know. Yeah, a lot of what we do on here is talk about like the starting of the business and how we built it. So, what was your plan for generating like your client base? Like, how did you grow and build such a solid client base, especially when you were starting out?
Yeah, so I would say things have changed significantly over the years. When I first started and went into it, I had a really nice lifestyle practice, is what I call it, right? It had a great client base, families that we worked with, generated a good amount of income for the family, and that was great. And basically went the normal route of referrals from existing families, CPAs, centers of influence, etc. And remember, I started in 2004, which was just really the onset of social media, online, etc.
Mhm.
And really about 5 years ago, we leaned into social media, and it was something I was fighting for a long time, and I didn't think people wanted to see what I was doing. But my wife convinced me that they did, and I needed to start sharing and be more vulnerable. And in the last 5 years, I would tell you that we get about a third of our new inquiries from online/social media. So Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. We get anywhere between 2 to 4 inquiries a week, most of which are from those areas and our website. And then second to that is from the families we serve. And then third is really from centers of influence.
Mm.
So it's really flip flopped quite a bit in terms of, where we were and how we were acquiring or beginning to work with new families to where we are today. Much, much different.
Mm. So now with social media, are you running ads? Are you doing paid stuff, or are you just doing all organic posting about what you do and that's what's generating your leads?
All organic,
Wow.
all organic. And I will tell
That's
you,
phenomenal.
yeah, yeah, we don't really spend. I mean, I would say, I can't say we spend zero, but from time to time we do boost a post.
Mhm.
But for the most part, it's all organic, and it's a combination of you know, uh, brand new people who don't know who we are versus people who I've been connected with for a very long time who are going through a life event, and all of a sudden, because they've seen us in their feed so much, they're like, let me call Larry. We just had somebody I went to high school with, had very little interaction with them since high school, and I didn't grow up on Long Island, grew up in Rockland County, and we've been connected on Facebook for a long time, and he's an NYPD officer, and he was retiring, and he reached out to us for us to help him and his family walk through the retirement. And we didn't have any kind of business relationship up until that point, but
Mm.
we've stayed in front of him. And it's hard to tell what ends up getting somebody over the line to make that outreach to us. And that's why I think it's so important for entrepreneurs out there to not just have one method or means. It's really, you got to have several different arrows in your quiver. For me, it's a combination of having the book, having the podcast, media appearances, appearing on other people's podcasts, and being active on social. All of those things, once somebody sees you, what you want them to do is see you, follow you, and then check you out and see, do you have what it takes to work with them and their family. So it's all those things really, have a lot of weight in that process.
Mm. So now, as far as like the media appearances, did was that all sprung from the book?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we leaned into that when we launched the book last, April of 2023. We really leaned into the media appearances. And, I highly recommend that if you want to have influence in your profession, being a published author is a huge way to get that started.
Mm.
And, I had this book idea in mind for about 10 years. I just didn't have the time to write it, but then I
Hmm.
did. I got a really good editor, and then we did hire a PR company. Shout out to Leverage with Media. We've been with them since we launched the book, and essentially they work only with self-published authors.
Mm.
And essentially, now you're an author, you have something to talk about. We've gotten a lot of demand from the media, and it's led to a lot of appearances, which have been fantastic.
Wow. Okay. So, can you just give me a little bit of insight about the process of becoming a self-published author? Like, what was that? What was that like?
A lot of writing,
Yeah.
which is not my forte. So basically, I put a lot of thoughts down on paper or on my computer, and then basically shipped all that off to a really good editor who basically took those thoughts and you know flush them out
Mm.
so that it would be in a book format.
Wow.
Took about a year or so to get to that point. You could probably do it a little bit quicker or a little bit slower, depending. The only word of advice I would give to any entrepreneur that's thinking about writing a book is make sure it's a book. Make sure it's a book and not a pamphlet. So this is my book, and you can see kind of the thickness of the book.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there that talk about being an author, and then they have this pamphlet. And I don't think it resonates as well. Make sure it's a book.
Mm. Wow. So that was a labor of love, I'm assuming, at some point because you spent so much time thinking about it.
Yeah, well, listen, when I turned on CNBC and all these other, radio and TV programs where like I said before, I heard these quote unquote pundits saying everybody should do this or everybody should be doing that, and then spend shaming people because they enjoy a good cup of coffee. It just drove me nuts. And it was like 10 years of frustration coming out in that book.
I like that term, spend shaming.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that all the time.
I got to stop spend shaming my wife. Like,
Well, that might not be a bad idea, depending. I don't know. I don't know the personal situation there.
it's
So,
definitely not a bad idea. She's an excellent shopper. But no, what so that my little quip made me forget my question. Um,
well, I'll give you a second to think about it. So, the old joke, right? Uh, guy reports, finds out that his wife's purse was stolen and doesn't tell the cops. I
yeah.
mean, listen, in full disclosure, and so we're not, being considered sexist here. There are plenty of men that I know also that their wives could claim the same thing.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh yeah.
it's equally reportable on both sides.
I mean, I would, Amazon, I feel like has had a big thing with that because I never spent so much money in my life because it's so easy. Like, you go
Yeah.
online, boom, 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 click, click, click. Like, I, it's probably a better way to save money that to have to go to the store at this point. Like, just say, okay, like I'm only going to buy something if I go to the store. Like, I'm not going to use online shopping. You could probably cut your budget down pretty quickly from that
Yeah,
point if you're spending a
probably.
lot.
You're probably right.
But so I guess we'll jump into the last couple of things here. But what I would love to know is from starting a business, what's if someone was starting a business right now, what's one or two or even three pieces of advice that you would give someone who's starting a business fresh up today for a young entrepreneur or old, doesn't matter.
Yes. So, I mean, if it's somebody that has a full-time job today and is trying to delve into something else, I think it's very important and I think it's critical that they just don't go necessarily all in right off the bat. And, I think that, our world today affords us the ability to kind of have that side gig and try out something. So if there's something you're really passionate about and that you think could drive revenue for your family, start working on it. Work on it outside the hours of your 9 to 5 and slowly lean into that more and more. And, hopefully find something that's not going to be capital intensive, but maybe time intensive that you have the time to lean into that. And, see, and you'll see if you have a proof of concept very shortly if you're, booking and driving revenue. And then you can slowly maybe cut down the hours on the 9 to 5 if your employer will allow it and gradually move into that entrepreneurial role. Or if you see it's hitting right off the bat, you can move into that entrepreneurial role. We had a family that the wife loved photography. She loved it. So she started taking pictures of expecting moms before birth and then after birth, and it took off. I mean, she was booked almost every day that she had available, and she shifted from her full-time work to this full-time. She's happier, more control of her life, and financially, she's making as much, if not more money than she was in the 9 to 5. So it's things like that that I think, with the tools and the things we have available today, it doesn't have to be an all or none. And I think that that's really the smartest way to kind of go about it, unless you have no other choice and you're out of a job and you just have to lean into this entrepreneurial venture. But keep in mind, I think we all, overestimate what we can do in one year and underestimate what we could do in 10. meaning you're probably not going to hit it out of the park in year one, but you have to have the staying power to stick with your idea and what you're looking to accomplish, between that 1 and 5 year mark to make sure that you have the ability to do it and make sure you're prepared for it mentally, physically, and financially.
Mm, that's phenomenal advice, because I think we see so much, because we love an underdog winning story of someone like, I quit my job and jumped right in and everything. But the reason why we're seeing that story, I think, is because it doesn't turn out to be successful a lot of the times. And
Agreed.
you don't hear about people who did it and jumped in and completely failed and then had to go do something else or go back to their old job. Like, you don't really hear those stories a lot. So the advice to dip your feet in, get going, and gradually jump in is so sound, I think, especially because of what we're fed constantly every day. And like, I get in my feed in Instagram all the time. And I want to say I would not be on social media if it wasn't for real estate. But like, it just, there's so much negativity and there's so much nonsense. There is a lot of stuff that makes me laugh. But I get if you want to make an extra $5,000 a month from your couch, blah, 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 read the caption. And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. And John, I mean, think about it in real estate terms. When you talk to people about their experiences with real estate, right? Most people tend to talk about and brag about the winners. You don't hear about the losers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear how they lost big on on an investment property,
Mm-hmm.
or the investment property that had the nightmare tenants that they couldn't wait to get rid of. You don't hear those stories. You always hear about the one, oh, I bought this piece of real estate and it doubled over the last 5 years or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because yeah, it's probably going to appreciate, but there's a lot of nightmares that could be entailed with
Right.
any of that stuff. So
Right.
many. It's it's a risky, as much as it's. I always like to say real estate. As far as an investment, if you're buying a house on Long Island, chances are it's a sound investment. Like, you're gonna appreciate, you're gonna get that money back over time. But at the same time, if you start delving into rental properties and other types of investment forms, that's where the risk really comes in, because now you're not relying on you to maintain that house. It's not on you at that point. It's on somebody else to be collecting money from. And that just opens up a whole new can of worms. It could be, again, it could be great and wonderful, but so many problems that could be entailed with
Agreed.
that. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. Like I said, you are on TV and everything. So you coming on here and giving me some time and speaking to my audience is really awesome. And I do truly appreciate that. It's phenomenal. And I thank you. But I do want to, yeah, I'll ask you one last question, but it's going to be pretty simple. What did you do today that brought you joy, Larry?
Oh, so I was spent some time talking with both of my boys today, and we're planning out what we're going to do this weekend. We're heading to Fenway Park this Saturday to see not the Red Sox. We're going to see the Savannah Bananas. Now, I don't know if you know who they are,
Nope.
but if you don't know who they are, look them up. If you like baseball, if you don't like baseball, you'll like the Savannah Bananas. It's more of an event, and I happen to have the catcher. I'm sorry, uh, ump, uh, the umpire from the Savannah Bananas on my podcast, and we're looking forward to seeing him this weekend. So we were chatting about that, and that brought me a lot of joy, and can't wait to head out that way tomorrow afternoon to Boston.
That's awesome. Love Boston. Love Fenway Park. Like, what a great place. And that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. Well, listen, enjoy yourself. And enjoy your family too.
Thank you.
All right. Well, once again, Larry, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'll have links and everything, but people definitely know where to find you, so they don't need me to do that. But I'll put links in the description anyway, just in case someone wants to click and get some great sound financial planning, mental health planning, physical health planning, all that good stuff.
Right. Thanks, John. Enjoy your day.
Yes, you too, Lawrence. Larry, thank you. Oh, I said Lawrence. Sorry. Yeah, this whole interview, I never called you
Yeah,
Lawrence
right.
till now.